This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, as always, Jeff Malinoff, and we got a special moment today to talk about. We got LeBron passing Michael Jordan on the all-time points scoring list. That happened yesterday. The only positive thing that happened to LA last night. We'll talk more about that game and that team situation more, because they keep getting worse and worse by the games as they progress. And also, we'll talk about the NHL and if the season ended today, what the matchups would be, and who I feel can still have a chance to really squeeze into the playoffs with only a handful of games remaining. So, first things first, we have to talk about it. LeBron James has passed Michael Jordan on the all-time scoring list. He is now fourth on the scoring list with 32,311 points in his career. And that is a very special accomplishment, of course. Being in the top five was an accomplishment enough, but now entering into the top four of an elite group of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Karl Malone, and Kobe Bryant. And a fun fact, actually, what I think is kind of interesting, all four of those guys had been a Laker once in their career, at least once. Karl Malone did it after his run with the Jazz ended. He joined, as well as him and Gary Payton, joined the Lakers in, I think it was 2003, 2004. To try to make a super team like we see today, but of course they were past their prime, so that didn't really happen. But like, it was basically saying, like, if they joined like 3 or 4 years earlier, that team would be dominant, like a dynasty type more than a dynasty. But again, it's one of those things where you're looking at it going, yeah, those guys are up there in age, they're trying to win a championship before they retire, which makes sense. They were both championship lists at the time. And, well, I think they still are, because they didn't win a championship. When Gary Payton and Karl Malone showed up, they did not win a championship. They actually went to the finals, if I'm not mistaken, and lost to Detroit, if I am, I believe I'm correct. If I'm wrong, please let me know. Looking through all of this and looking at LeBron's career and how he got to this point, to say now that he's not a top 5 player of all time is ridiculous. He's at least, I understand some people have their reluctance of not putting him as the number 1 player of all time. I get that. Like, his finals record is has a little blemishes on it, you know? He hasn't won all of them. He's had some problems in the past in the finals against some very challenging teams. I get that. But what he has done also himself in the form of just taking an Eastern Conference Cavaliers team that proves that they're nothing without LeBron. After he leaves twice, they both their records just crumble. Both the times he left, the season afterwards, they just really crumbled. I mean, this season and the season he went to Miami, it just speaks for itself. And when he gets there, they're immediately contenders again. He's immediately championship contenders, and they're in the finals. He's been to 8 straight finals. Well, he's been since 2011, so 2011, 2012, 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17, so 7 times. I guess 2018 as well. Well, no, this is the 2018 season, 2018-2019 season. That was the 2017-2018 season. So do with that as you will. And going from 8 straight finals appearances to now what seems to be almost destined to miss the playoffs, because they are 6 games out of 8th place with 17 games remaining. So they basically need to win at least half their games and have the eight-seeded Clippers or even the Spurs or both lose half their games. So it's a tall glass to order, but like it's not impossible. But I mean, when it's under 1%, that seems pretty dim in hindsight. But I guess there is a highlight to this season with LeBron doing that record. But he also said that the young players had too high of expectations. I believe that was in an interview after this game when they lost. But can you blame them? Can you blame them for having high expectations? Because when LeBron James joins your team, and he is probably is the best player in the NBA and the greatest of this generation, how can you not have your optimism saying, do we have a chance to go to the finals here? Because, like, he's been in the finals every single year since 2011. So it's safe to say that people were having expectations of this team could do much with the addition of LeBron James, because that's what he brings to the table. He brings legitimacy. He brings excellence. He brings just anything you can think of when you're looking at success. Because of the fact he's earned the success, he's brought the success to every team he's been on. And like I've said this before, he's only missed the playoffs in his first 2 years in the NBA, and that's when he was like 18 and 19 years old. So in his 20s and his 30s, he has not missed the playoffs. But it seems to be that we might be in the middle of a probable miss of the playoffs for the first time in his adult life, you can say. His teenage life he did, but his adult life he has not. And with that being said, I don't think this, like, people are like, oh, this could totally affect his legacy. He's not the greatest of all time. He doesn't take this team to playoffs. I don't think that's entirely true. I think that this team is there's just a lot of trouble with it. There's uncertainties with it. It's just there's not a lot of chemistry, it feels like, on the court. It feels like there's too much when it comes to LeBron with his load. Like, has to do everything himself, but when he's done well in the past, he's needed some rebounders. Like, all LeBron needs is a defensive forwards and center that can rebound, and perimeter shooting guards, and let him do the rest, and he will win. That's what I'm saying. Like, all he needs to do. Well, I know that sounds like he needs a lot, but I think it's more along the lines of just like, if he has a positive perimeter shooter and a great defender and rebounder in the post, that team is unstoppable. But the fact is, you're asking him to do every single thing: rebounding, defending, perimeter shooting, driving down the lane and getting up there, in front of all the posts and trying to get up there and take the fouls and go with and ones like James Harden does, and as well as try to drive those assists home. That's too much for one player in any way, shape, or form. Even Michael Jordan, that would be too much for him. You know why? Because, his supporting cast was Horace Grant. He had Dennis Rodman. He had Scottie Pippen. He had Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr was that perimeter shooter. Scottie Pippen was that defender. Dennis Rodman was that rebounder. Horace Grant was also that rebounder when he was there. Like, he had the perfect supporting cast. Like, he could do the scoring. The inside scoring, the mid-range jumper, that's all Jordan, and him leading the offense, that's no problem. But having Kerr with his perimeter shooting, having Pippen with his elite defending, as well as Dennis Rodman, having Horace Grant and Dennis Rodman getting those boards when they need them, shows why that team was so dominant. Whether they had, I don't believe they had Horace Grant and Dennis Rodman at the same time, but they were both fought. They were both big fighters in the post and rebounds and such, so they were both about the same contributors when it came down to it. So, when LeBron has that, when he has this running cast like Jordan has, he's spectacular. But when you have guys like Kuzma, Ingram, heart, and they're not rebounders. They're not defenders. They're scorers, especially Kuzma. And you can even put Ingram in the scoring category, if you will. And when you have that, when you have too many of the same thing, especially in the NBA, when you have too many guys in one specialty and multiple guys in that same specialty, scoring, for example, you can only do so much. You can only accomplish so much because of the fact that there's still way more than just scoring. There's still way more than just that accomplishment. And so with that being said, I think that just LeBron is in that stance of where he maybe thought that this team could have moved into different roles on the team, but they're so used to their current roles on the team that it doesn't really matter in the long run. And when I mean doesn't really matter in the long run, it means like they're so used to their roles that changing it and thinking they will change just like that in a season is just not the way. Like, you can't do that, And it takes time for those roles to get changed and get used to. So, in a sense, this is more than just a 1 year, like, this is how it's going to go. You know what I mean? It's just, there's a lot more work to it. And if he went to a team like that had that certain circumstances in where they were agreeing and they knew those certain roles and they had to stick with them, they can't do that. Kuzma can't just go from the 36-point scorer in a game to just a role player that tries to just play through LeBron and get rebounds. But when you're looking at it, it's just on the facts that LeBron's just in the wrong place or in the wrong position. I can't blame Luke Walton for all of it. You can blame him for some, but not all. So with that being said, there was an incident during the game where Rondo was sitting with the fans and not with his teammates, and the announcers were kind of getting him on for it. And I agree with this because that should never be the case. He says he's done it multiple times this season as well, which also puts me in a bitter mood. Like, thinking about that, I'm like, that is so disrespectful. Not to the fan base, but to your teammates. That is insulting. You obviously have no care about them, it feels like, and it's just wrong in so many. I feel like it's just a very wrong thing to do. And when it comes to like leadership and you're a veteran like Rondo, you got to lead by example. If you're just sitting on the opposite side of the court with fans, that's where you're resting. That's just wrong. That's not how it's supposed to go. That's not how a team is supposed to get this done. So with that being said, Luke Walton absolutely should have reprimanded him and should have gone on his case, gone to him saying, "What the heck are you doing?" Maybe not heck, but a little more vulgar than that. Get to the bench and try to get some order in there, get some control. But the fact that he let it happen so frequently, or so, like, just not the care in the world, I think it's more along the lines that I think he knows, as well as everyone else knows, his run with the Lakers is almost certainly over. Now, I could be wrong. They say he's going to be done by the end of the season. He might even get done before then if they keep losing like this. But when it comes down to it, I think on terms of the fact, like, Luke Walton has lost control. I know he's lost control for a good bit, but it's gotten to a point where, like, he's not even trying, it feels like, anymore. He's given up. Like, his work ethic, his motivation just doesn't seem there. He just seems to be like, this is over. Like, my run with the Lakers is over. Why even try? But I don't know. I could be wrong in this, but I see it more along the lines of a a guy who's just had enough. Like, he's sick and tired of all this, maybe. I don't know how else to say it, but it's just along the lines of Luke Walton. I'm not sure if he quit on his team or his team quit on him first. I'm not sure, but honestly, the feeling is mutual at this point where they're all quitting on each other, it looks like. And with that being said, I think it's on more along the lines of, if Luke Walton finds a job elsewhere, will he be a little more in control? Will he be a little more learning from the mistakes he had in LA with his managerial skills and his leadership skills, and put that into a better effect when it comes down to next time he's a head coach? Because he probably will get another opportunity. I don't see why he won't be getting another opportunity. I've seen other coaches get opportunities. He might be a possibility when it comes down to it. But again, I guess it all still depends on how every other coach does in the NBA. So we'll see how everything turns out for him. But I'm assuming he'll get another opportunity sooner rather than later. But with that being said, once again, but first and foremost, just before we take a break, congratulations to LeBron James. A insane milestone. Obviously a future Hall of Famer. And obviously on my list of the top 5 greatest of all time, he's in the top 3 of my greatest of all. So he's my top 3 greatest of all time, all things considered. So with that being said, we are going to take a short break. And when we come back, we'll talk about the NHL, because we are at the end of this month. We are at the end of the season, going right into that great moment of the NHL playoffs. And we'll talk all about that when we return.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. Last time we left off, we were talking about LeBron and his milestone he passed. Michael Jordan, who had 32,292 points. Now LeBron has 32,311 points. But moving on, we got some NHL I want to discuss, because we're closing in on the end of the season here. Postseason begins in April for the NHL. And I've said this before, and I'll say it once again. If you have not watched, if you don't really watch hockey, I highly recommend you watch NHL playoffs, because you'll be getting into it more and more as the playoffs continue, because that's how exciting it is. And with that being said, that's how I got into hockey. Actually, watching the playoffs really got me into it more than anything else. So that is something you got to consider when you're looking at something new in April, and you're waiting for the NFL draft to start or something like that. Anyways, talking about the NHL playoffs, we have still a lot of teams still fighting for those final spots in their respective divisions. Like I said before, it's the top three teams in each division that get into the playoffs. And the teams that are not in the top 3 but have the 2 better records out of the divisions in their conference will get the wild card spots. So 8 teams get in the playoffs each side, so NBA style basically, if you're not aware of it. But if the season ended now, looking at the current standings as I'm looking at it right now, we have let's just start with the Eastern Conference. As the Atlantic Division, the Lightning are just dominant with 106 points. No one's even sniffing them in this entire league. The Bruins are behind them in their division with 89 points. The Maple Leafs at 87, and the Canadiens are the wild card team at the moment with 79 points, and they're tied in the wild card with the Pittsburgh Penguins with 79 points for the 2 spots in the playoffs. For the wild cards, at least, not the division, not just being the top three teams of the division. So with that being said, looking at the Canadiens and the Penguins and those there's still one more team that can really, in my mind, there's only really one team that can really make a jump to the playoffs and bump one of them out, and that's the Columbus Blue Jackets, who have 77 points. So with that being said, they could take up either the Penguin. They could take over the Penguins or the Canadiens spot in the playoffs any game now, because there's still a month left of play left. There's still, I believe, March 22nd is the final day of the NHL regular season, so they have time to get things done. Actually, the next game the Columbus Blue Jackets have is actually today in a pretty important matchup, all things considered, as they are playing tonight the Pittsburgh Penguins. And yes, that is the team that's above them, not only in their Metropolitan Division in the Eastern Conference, but that's the team that they're trying to take away their wild card spot to, and probably the team that they have the best opportunity to, due to the fact they are playing them and they're in the same division. So it sounds to me like that's the better option to take that spot. But they can still also take the Canadian spot. It just all depends on who has the better better record going in for the wild card position. But do I see the Canadiens or the Penguins making the playoffs without wild card? Absolutely. As for the Canadiens, not the Canadiens, however, for their division, because the Maple Leafs are above them at the 3 spot, and Toronto is 87 points compared to the Montreal Canadiens, 79 points. So that seems to be a foregone conclusion. But the thing is, in the Metropolitan, we have the Islanders, surprisingly, were number 1 for a long period of time, but the Capitals have retaken that Metropolitan Division number 1 spot. They're ahead by 2 points, 85-83 over the Islanders in the Metropolitan Division. But the real kicker is both the Hurricanes and the Penguins are identical at 79 points in the Metropolitan Division. So if you're a Carolina Hurricanes fan, you're rooting for the Blue Jackets to beat the Penguins tonight, and you're hoping for your next game to be a win, which for the Hurricanes is, I think, also still tonight as well. No, it's not tonight. It's tomorrow against the Winnipeg Jets. So with that being said, if the Hurricanes want to hold on to their 3 spot as of right now, they have to win this game tomorrow against the Jets, who are no laughing matter. I'll tell about the record when we get to the Western Conference. And they need the Columbus Blue Jackets to keep fighting for their wild card hopes against the Pittsburgh Penguins tonight. So I guess it's advantage. If there's advantage in the Metropolitan, like the Blue Jackets could technically steal a 3rd seed in theory, because they're only 2 points behind the 3rd place Hurricanes and the 4th place Penguins, like I said, at 79 points compared to their 77 points. So it's not impossible, but I would say it's unlikely. But it's one of the most possible routes that could happen. Like, it's not like a impossible odds thing. It's not like the Lakers trying to make the playoffs or anything. And so with that being said, if I had to make a guess right now, or let's just look at it in a perspective. If the season ended right now, if the season did end right now, in the Eastern Conference, we would see Tampa Bay playing the wild card team Canadiens. So Montreal will get the unfortunate drawing of getting the best team in the hockey in the first series of the season. And in the regular season series, like they played each other three times, Tampa Bay has won all three. They beat Montreal on November 3rd, 4-1. And the closest Montreal's kind of beaten Tampa was they lost 6-5. That was in December. And then their most recent matchup, Tampa Bay shut them at 3-0. So right now, Tampa Bay would love that series against the Montreal Canadiens if it made it to the playoffs because they have their number this season as they might be looking for a series sweep going into their next game, which is April 2nd. So that is the 1 seed versus the bottom wildcard seeded matchup. Well, how it's formatted is 1 seed versus wildcard 2 seed. That's basically how that I've always seen it in that format. As to the other wildcard team, as of right now, the Penguins, we have to face the Washington Capitals in a little bit of a classic rematch because these teams have faced each other multiple times in the playoffs before. I think if I had to make a pick with who had the upper hand when it comes to playoff time in these type of games, it would definitely be the Penguins. They always seem to, except for last season when the Capitals won the Cup, it was usually a domination, maybe not domination, but it was just bad luck for the Capitals as they would beat the Capitals. And that was kind of like a curse for the Capitals, is when they faced the Penguins, they usually lost in a series with them. I mean, especially in their back-to-back year, the Penguins, when they won back-to-back cups, they went through the Capitals to do it. So there's just a lot of history and animosity between the two, Washington versus Pittsburgh, I guess. Like, it isn't like Boston versus Pittsburgh as you would like it is in the NFL or anything like that. So that's just how that goes. But regardless, for the Capitals, if they have to face the Pittsburgh Penguins in the first round to continue their chance to repeat as Stanley Cup champions, it's going to be a very difficult situation going through a team that they did beat last season in the playoffs, granted, but with the history, not just from last year, but just the history of playing them in the playoffs, it's never been on the Capitals' side. So I think they would try to avoid playing the Pittsburgh Penguins altogether. Just maybe that's their kryptonite. And, sometimes Superman overcomes kryptonite, and that's what happened last season. Maybe that'd be the only time. But who really knows how that's all going to go down? If the Penguins do steal if they do seal the first wild card spot and play the Capitals. And if the Capitals hold on to that 1 seed, because the New York Islanders are still right behind them by 2 points, so they can still walk away with the Metropolitan Division Championship, the New York Islanders, that is. But if they didn't and they got second, and the Carolina Hurricanes continued to hold on to their third place spot, it would be New York Islanders versus the Carolina Hurricanes. And I don't even remember the last time Carolina Hurricanes were in the playoffs. I know they won a cup earlier in the century at 2005, 2006. Maybe it was even 2007 was the Ducks. I think it was 2006 that the Carolina Hurricanes did that miracle run and won the cup. So, with that being said, them trying to the Hurricanes at least trying to recreate some of that 2006 magic, they'll have to go through a Cinderella story themselves, and the New York Islanders, who really just came out of nowhere and been just an awesome team this season. I mean, 38-21-7, that's a pretty darn good record, all things considered. They're and then the Washington Capitals are 39-21-7, so they're only like a 1 win less than the number 1 seed in their division, the Capitals. So, really, and I got to say, congratulations to the New York Islanders, because they've just been the butt of jokes. They've been questioned if they're going to be the New York Islanders anymore. They're moving and all this stuff, and are questions about leaving New York or leaving. They left Long Island, I believe. They're probably in Brooklyn now. Just all this doubt through the minds of the fans. So it's just cool to see a team like that. It's kind of like the Browns or something being successful. You're like, good for them. That's kind of the thought process to that. And the final matchup of the Eastern Conference side is Boston-Toronto. And no, not the Raptors and the Celtics, but this one's interesting just because they're pretty even throughout, 89 points to 87 points. This is, if that series happens, it's probably going to be pretty unpredictable, all things considered. I know Boston has the 3-1 regular series lead, but again, Toronto is no one to doubt for any reason. And that's just how I see things with that kind of series. But, I mean, I love these series matchups, Tampa Bay and Montreal, Boston and Toronto, Washington and Pittsburgh, and, of course, New York and Carolina. And moving on to the Western Conference side before we head to our next topic, we got to talk about the Western Conference as well. But you know what? We're a little bit over at the moment for break time, so let's take a short break. And when we come back, we'll talk about the Western Conference side of the NHL, and we'll right on that when we return.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. We were talking about the Eastern Conference in the NHL. Now let's talk about the Western Conference in the NHL. As the Sharks and Flames in the Pacific Division are fighting for that first place, currently the Flames are above them about 89 points to their 86 points. And, of course, the Golden Knights, who were an expansion team last year and now are the reigning Western Conference champions. So a huge, everyone thought they were at the bottom of the Western Conference, bottom of the league last season, and then they turn out of nowhere and become arguably the most upbeat team, maybe an elite team in the NHL. But of course, that was last season. This season's a little different. They're not going to be first in the Pacific, but they're still playoff contenders, which is truly incredible. I mean, I think regardless of what position you're in when it comes down to the playoffs, any team has an opportunity to make it to the finals. I mean, we've seen that happen time and time again in the NHL. So with that being said, those are the three seeds, and then right behind them at the fourth is the Coyotes. The Phoenix Coyotes, or is it the Arizona Coyotes now? It's hard to keep track anymore. Arizona Coyotes. They keep changing. That's the last time I saw them. So the Arizona Coyotes at 69 points, hoping to find a little bit of breather room when it comes down to a wild card spot, but it doesn't look like it's going to be, as in the Central Division, the 4th and 5th place teams, the Dallas Stars and the Minnesota Wild. You can even add the 6th place Colorado Avalanche. They all are in 70 points or above, so they're all above Arizona Coyotes. So it looks like the race towards the two wild card spots are in the Central Division. And as for the top of the Central Division, we have the Predators, who were President's Trophy winner last year. That's probably going to be Tampa Bay this year. For those who are unaware, the President's Trophy, that's the best overall team in the regular season, most points. So obviously that's good to go to Tampa Bay. Predators were at last year. They're at 83 this year. Still first in their division, so there's still playoff contenders and Stanley Cup contenders for the Western Conference at least. Winnipeg Jets, who made the playoffs last year, are trying to make it again with 82 points, so 1 point behind the Central Division leader Predators. And then we have the Blues at 76%, who are trying to find a way to get St. Louis credit for a sports team. So those are the standings to the knowledge of as of right now, March 7th. And then looking if the season ended right now, if the season just ended and said, hey, we're going playoffs right now. The top seeded team in the Western Conference will be the Calgary Flames taking on the Minnesota Wild in a very similar way of difference in points. Like Tampa Bay was 106 and Canadians were 79. The Calgary Flames are 89 to Minnesota's 72. So we'll see how that leads. But the Flames and the Wild have played each other 3 times this season, with the Flames winning 2 of them. Flames won 2-0, Calgary won 2-1, and Minnesota again, Calgary won 2-1, Calgary won 2-0, and then Minnesota came and won the last meeting, which was a couple days ago actually, 4-2. So that's the first seed matchup. As for the second wild card team, it looks like it's going to be the Dallas Stars taking on the Nashville Predators, and it's a 10-point difference, so that's an interesting thing. But when it comes down to the regular season, since they're in the same division, they played each other 5 times, with the Predators leading the series 3-2. They beat Dallas in overtime their first meeting. Then Dallas shut them out 2-0 in the second meeting. Then Dallas beat them 3-1. But then Nashville beat them 3-2 in overtime and then just beat them 5-3. So 2 out of the 3 wins the Predators have against the Dallas Stars are in overtime. So if we see a series against these two, we expect some overtime games. Well, honestly, when it comes down to the NHL playoffs, expect a lot of overtime games because those are super exciting and super fun to watch. Highly recommend it. Again, I can't stress enough the excitement that you have when it comes down to one goal, winner take all type of thing, especially overtime game 7. Like a couple years ago, there was a Game 7 overtime matchup in the Eastern Conference Finals between Pittsburgh and the Ottawa Senators, and it was just heart-pounding moments throughout. So maybe we'll see something like that again. It's one of those iconic moments where you're like, oh, that's what it's all about, Game 7, Stanley Cup Final, overtime. Like, that's what we wait for type of moments. So with that being said, I'm really looking forward to all these. If these all happen, I would not mind it if this setup happened for the playoffs. But, again, it's one of those things where you're looking at it going like, any matchup is usually entertaining. Like, it's very rare in hockey where you see a matchup and go, or watch a matchup and it's so one-sided that's not fun to watch. So with that, I just say it's indescribable because you usually, like 9 times out of 10, you're seeing an amazing series. There's not really a bad series to think about. And with that being said, I actually love it when like people who don't watch hockey watch it for the first time and I tell them watch the playoffs and they like get super duper into it because it's like not a sport you would think you'd be interested in. It just like seems like, oh, that's just a sport from Canada. Well, I believe basketball was made by a Canadian, someone from Canada. So, I mean, they know what to do up there. And with that being said, it's just on the terms of looking at it and going, you know what? This is an exciting, fast-paced sport that's competitive from first period to third period 80% of the time, and give it a chance. That's all I'm going to say about it. But we're going to finish off the day, if not that, but we are going to finish. We're done with the hockey talk for right now, but we are going to talk about how the Arizona Cardinals, we're going to NFL now, are kind of in denial that they're shopping Josh Rosen because there was a team that confirmed another team, a third party, if you will, confirmed that They were shopping Josh Rosen, which got a lot of other teams interested. But then you look at it and go and then they all of a sudden they say no, we're not doing that. So I'm just saying, make up your gosh darn mind. And I don't know who's right here. Are the Cardinals really not shopping him, or are they actually shopping him and they just don't want the news to break out and cause friction between the teams or something? I honestly have no idea what they are thinking. So with that being said, it's pretty unpredictable what's going to happen in the next few days. And if Josh Rosen is being shopped, I already said my piece yesterday on what team should go for him. But again, it's one of those things where you can't – he's not a starter yet. You got to marinate him. All rookie quarterbacks need to be marinated, I feel like. That's like my crucial rule. If you draft a quarterback and you don't – excuse me – and you don't have a starting quarterback, do not make your rookie first-year quarterback your starter. Get a veteran from free agency, doesn't matter who it is, and just have him play behind him. It's not that hard. It's really not that hard, and it's easy to do, and it's simple, and it gives your quarterback time to learn the playbook, because that playbook is 10 inches thick, and it's just the right thing to do in the long run, because he can only improve from there. But again, a lot of teams think they just need to throw him right into the fire. But that's not how a quarterback usually works. It's very rare for a quarterback's first year to come right off the bat and be great throughout his career. So with that being said, Arizona, if they're going to let go of Rosen and draft Murray, if this is what's going to happen, what they need desperately to do is how they started this season. Last season, they had Sam Bradford, a veteran quarterback, but he was pretty bad, all things considered. But there was no need to change quarterbacks. I know how bad he was playing, but do not put in your rookie quarterback. You can put in another veteran quarterback or two, have a veteran quarterback backup and make your starting backup quarterback even farther down the depth chart. Just don't put him in his first year. Have him learn that playbook for a year. Have him practice for that whole year with the team. Have him get better, improving in practice and knowledge and film and all that other things before you say, hey, get in there and face the team we're playing with, and we have no line to defend you, and a poor receiving core, and an aging wide receiver that's our best player, and a running back who's supposed to be one of the best in the league but keeps getting hurt and is not even looking at expectations, let alone exceeding them. So good luck at that, kid. It's just really, you're really just gonna do all that. You're really it's like you're costing the kid. Hopefully Josh Rosen finds a new team and they don't start him. If they do start him, I say he's considered a draft bust by next year if he started again for either the Cardinals or another team, because he needs time to understand the way the NFL is played, because it's a lot different than college football. It's a lot different than his time at UCLA. So I just assume that is the right move. Because why rush a product like that? Why rush a quarterback product? They are the hardest one. That one takes the most time. That one takes the most time to really be positive. Jimmy Garoppolo is a perfect example. He was behind Brady for multiple years, and then he goes to San Francisco and wins 4 straight and got a massive contract. And I think he did so well because they were patient with him, because they had a great quarterback in front of him, and he could learn the playbook all the time. He could understand everything right away. And then when he got traded to the 49ers for that second-round pick, he didn't even start right away. They just said, you ready? You understand the playbook? He said, yeah, I can do the best I can. And then Kyle Shanahan, the offensive guru, really helped him step up his game. So honestly, that's why I say the 49ers are a big, I already said the 49ers might be a threat for the NFC West already, due to if they nail the free agent market, as well as if the Cardinals do draft Kyler Murray, they have an edge rusher in Nick Bosa with DeForest Buckner on the defensive line. But I'm getting off topic anyways. But what I'm saying is, if they're shopping Josh Rosen, a team with a quarterback already needs to go for him and think about their future like that. The Patriots, the Giants, you can even put I don't know, who has an aging quarterback. Maybe Atlanta. I mean, Matt Ryan's not that old, but still, it's been almost about a decade since he's been drafted. So something to think about there in Atlanta. But regardless, that should be our show today. Thank you so much for joining us, and please tune us in tomorrow as we will see any other news that happens in the world of the NFL, which tomorrow seems to be where the Antonio Brown trade will happen. But that is all rumors, and we'll find out on the next show. But as always, I'm Jeff Malinoff, and I'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.